if their hands are tied, they have tied their hands by themselves. Now, we know that an orphaned calf will always have to lick its own back. Azimio is orphaned. And at strategy level, at tactful, at the level of tact, they seem to be demonstrating that they are quite feeble. Now, as a matter of fact, you realize that this pulling to different sides could be germinating from the multifarious interests that the leadership of Azimio is presently facing. Be deceived not. Raila Odinga's interests in the circumstances vary quite considerably from the interests of Martha Karua, Wajakoya, Edwin Sifuna, Mwangi wa Iria, all that slate of leaders or principles within Azimio. Today, as a matter of fact, you would realize that Kalonzo Musyoka, Honorable Kalonzo Musyoka, 10th Vice President of Kenya, Martha Karua, Wajakoya, Mwangi wa Iria, are using Raila Odinga, the Earl of Bondo, as their political crutches. But the question arises, for how long will a puppy suckle the wilting teats of a dying mother? Not long. And so here you realize that in the absence of a Raila Odinga onslaught against the Kenya Kwanza regime, Martha Karua, Kalonzo Musyoka have no platform, have no voice, have no vocal cord. For Raila Odinga, he knows that at this sunset period in his political career, he has to do everything to remain politically relevant, lest he's written off. Recall that immediately after the election, Kalonzo Musyoka and others had begun writing Raila Odinga off, saying that they are now preparing themselves to take over, to inherit Raila Odinga's political bedrock. Raila Odinga did not permit them that. And so if it's a question of using Maandamano or demonstrations, which in fact is due to anyone and any organization or any political party as provided for in the Constitution, within that constitutional permit, it must be used with the benefit of caution for the greater good, not purposefully just for purposes of engaging in, as we have seen in the most recent past, the politics of destruction and agency of anarchy. If at all, indeed, the state of the economy is so bad, of course, we know that the cost of living is so high here in this country and elsewhere on the continent and elsewhere in the world, then why should it be most strategic to embrace and pursue a path of Maandamano, which we know very well that leads to lots of destruction for the very people that it's being claimed are being fought for?
Okay.
And so to that extent, it is possible that the choices that Azimio has are few. One of them,
allow me to take a break. Then we come back with the choices. And then Mark, but because I need to take a break, Javas,
sure.
Sorry for cutting you short. Mark, there's something in this particular Standard article that was penned yesterday, and in which Javas was quoted. Say, Raila has issued a series of ultimatums to the Ruto regime, such as those during the collapsed bipartisan talks, but the opposition chief seems to be making tactical retreats where necessary as opposed to past years. Is that part of the problem? Perhaps what is needed in a situation such as this is the Raila of old. We take a break. We come back with Javas on the choices on the table and Mark's response to this. All right, welcome back to AM Live. We're touching again, as we did in the previous break, on matters rather my panelists were. And Javas, I cut you short just before we took this break. What choices are there for Azimio?
Before we went to the break, you said what options are there on the table. First of all, we need to ask ourselves if Azimio has got the table. There is no table for them. The table has to be presented or offered by the government, as it is now. And that's why after President William Ruto indicated that he has heard and listened to the war cries by Azimio and the issues raised, he said, okay, let's have a bipartisan discussion. And Raila Odinga acquiesced to that. It also shows that Raila Odinga and Azimio are playing catch-up. They are not a step ahead. They have met more than their match in the political strategist and leader that's William Ruto. Right now, Raila Odinga has got to go to the drawing board with this Azimio. Secondly, and here I'm looking at Azimio as a team, then Azimio in terms of the various elements within it. Some people are dead weight, huge baggage. For example, even when we had Maandamano in the most recent past weeks, what was happening in the areas where some of these leaders in Azimio come from? Nothing. It was only centralized and happening in Nairobi alone. So they are dead weight. They are only persons who want to appear to the stage for purposes of taking all the credit. Let's face it, without going back to the drawing board, without shedding off the dead skin like a snake, Raila Odinga will continue struggling, pulling all this dead weight with him. Thirdly, they must not imagine that demonstrations is the only option that they have. They need possibly to start engaging in internal caucuses, regional caucuses with the people, because so far, evidence is before us that with the public consultations that they've been engaging in, there is nothing consultative about it. It also shows that they do not have initial reflections before taking action. I have said on record before that there was no rationalization of issues in Parliament by Azimio, by one, for instance, electing to walk out, all right, so that they do not take a vote the previous week. Secondly, in terms of engaging even with the caucus of the civil society, remember that when we had the fight for multi-party democracy, political parties in the opposition worked hand in hand with the civil society, engaging in critical discourse, and then carrying the people along by way of engagement. Today, as Arnold said a little earlier, parts of the media is acting opposition, part of civil society is acting opposition, and the opposition political wing is trying to act opposition, while some part of the same opposition political wing is acting government. So all this confusion, as I said, demonstrates a lack of tact, lack of foresight, and in fact, there is so much fog within the mental space of the Azimio strategy team. And so leaving things as they are right now, I can assure you, in the next 4 years, Azimio will continue playing catch up to what and reacting to what is being done or the slips on the part of government and the government's delivery of services.
All right. And
further,
but let me invite Mark to come in at this point. Mark, what several things raised in this article, one I read out, with regard to Raila, it being said that Raila has made, let me just read it, Raila has issued a series of ultimatums to the Ruto regime, such as those during the collapse bipartisan talks, but the opposition